to begin with this from Sam Drury, who says, just listen to Pete start the Carabao Cup Ramble Reacts midweek by mentioning that it's the first all-Premier League quarter-final lineup in 14 years. Is it time to stop kidding ourselves that this is a semi-serious competition and just get rid? I find it a shame to ask the question, as of course having one less cup available for the millions of us other non-Big Six fans is far from ideal. But as the wonderful Mr. Roy Hodgson once said, let's not take the piss here. The facts are, it's now named after a energy drink, and the big boys simply cannot lose. Very difficult to see the point of its existence now, and handicapping it from the start is just further mocking it. Strong words there, Jim, from Sam. Do you agree?
So let's add some sort of further context to this. So the teams in the Champions League and the Europa League are now seeded so that they avoid each other, which is what Sam is referring to. So from the off, it's imbalanced, isn't it? It's kind of not the same. Doesn't apply to everybody, which does undermine any sort of competition. I think it's the 7. I think Chelsea are included in the clubs who don't enter until the 4th round, and as we've touched on, they can't draw each other because of fixture clashes. And
you said that seeding undermines any cup competition. There's a lot of cup competitions in football that are seeded.
True.
I mean, it hasn't been the
but when you draw them out of the hat, it's a bit...
Yeah, so you're saying traditionally in this competition it hasn't.
But I think it's a short competition, isn't it? I think it's slightly different from the Champions League being seeded.
Or the World Cup.
Or the World Cup being seeded, yeah. Because, there's one line I would take issue with where he says it's a fact that the big boys simply cannot lose. It's not a fact.
It is
extremely likely.
It is a fact that it's named after a shit energy drink.
That is a fact. 100%. But I'll give Sam the benefit of the doubt there.
That can change, though, Sam. Stick around a few years, and maybe Pete Donaldson will have his way, and it will be the Monster League Cup.
Or the Ramble League Cup.
The Monster League Cup is way better, isn't it? Maybe we should start referring it to that, as good as Carabao have been to us all. But I think, I think the League Cup really is a victim of the kind of growth at all costs attitude of modern football, isn't it? Because it's now made up of so many different compromises because of the fixture congestion that has come about because of the expansion of the Champions League and the Europa League. And obviously something does have to be done to kind of fit it in there. But I just think it's a bit of a kind of Frankenstein's monster at this point as well. Well, Frankenstein's Carabao at this point. And I wonder if the writing might be on the wall for it, because money talks in football. It doesn't generate a lot. We've spent a lot of last season laughing at the prize money being 100 grand.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that the fixtures are that popular on TV. I'm just speculating on that point, but it is the kind of, the sort of forgotten child of the whole sport, isn't it, in this country? So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that if in 5 years it makes way, because with every round of fixtures, you do get the managers of the top clubs complaining about fixture congestion. Not directly, but it's not a coincidence that narrative pops up every time, is it?
Yes. Are you saying that should we... But you said about the growth of football and the growth of it all, this is inevitable. You're saying we should privatise or nationalise the League Cup?
Yeah, nationalise the League Cup.
Yeah.
That's a great... That would be a very interesting point of difference, wouldn't it?
We should invite foreign investors to take up the League Cup.
One might say we have.
Maybe scrap it and build flats on it.
Now you're talking. Vish, hey-ho, Carabao must go. What do you think? Will you be chanting that in the streets of wherever you live?
Yeah.
What do you think, though? League Cup, do you want to see it scrapped? I mean, you enjoyed it when Manchester United won it, of course, because apparently they did under Ten Hag.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's coloured in that way because you enjoy the exciting matches, you enjoy winning it, obviously. But that's literally it. I think, it doesn't pay much for even, the teams that could really benefit from the money don't get that much money in the grand scheme of things, compared to, like, I suppose, their needs and various financial situations they're in, which is not to dismiss an amount of money, but it simply isn't enough. It's simply not worth it for them to, put into it. And
that, though, that's very much a big top half Premier League.
Well,
I
big
club
think so.
coming to town is probably still good for generating gate receipts, isn't it?
To a point, but I think
teams in the Football League would generally speaking more. They want the League Cup. I mean, Steve Parish, obviously, at the hierarchy of Crystal Palace.
But that's so. Where did Palace finish last year?
They finished in the Premier League.
Yeah, they finished in the Premier League.
Yeah.
They're one of the top 10 teams in the country.
Well,
I don't think
not traditionally,
that's,
not at the moment. Not
No.
traditionally.
The point I'm trying to make is they're okay. Even if they finish 20th, they're one of the 20th best teams in the country.
But he wants to keep it. Like, he's very pro.
Yeah, of course, because they can probably win it, and it means quite a big deal. But if you win the first, well, the team that won the first round last year got $5,000, $7,000 for the second round, $10,000 for the third round, and from that point on, incremental increases of 5 all the way through to that. Finishing runners up where you get 50.
But my point is, though, that the people and the teams that want to scrap the League Cup, it is often, perhaps almost exclusive, but certainly far more often than not, those who are the big boys. Hence,
sure.
Sam says in his question, non-big six.
Yeah, I'm not saying
the vast majority of clubs really would want to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it should be scrapped. I generally have no kind of emotional feeling to it whatsoever. What I'm saying is, it won't be missed if it goes.
Yeah.
Because basically, and this is a broader problem because it's not, because I read from the numbers there, it's not like the League Cup allows a greater distribution of wealth down the chain. Mm-hmm. Now, there are conversations constantly ongoing about how much the Premier League needs to help the EFL, and obviously they struck a big deal last year with various different caveats about money filtering down, and the League Cup's not going to solve that. But I think it does alleviate, a couple of things like fixture congestion to a point. Because again, the teams that can cope with it are the big teams who want it scrapped. Yeah, ironically. So we're in this weird situation anyway, and I would say it benefits like a very small group of Premier League teams.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So like Palace, like Spurs at the moment.
Fulham last season.
Also, I mean, you get young players making their debuts in this competition for big clubs who traditionally maybe find it a bit harder to play a 17-year-old because the stakes are high in games.
Yeah.
And obviously that's, it's sort of irrelevant to Sam's question really, but that is something that makes it interesting as a competition. I really like it as a competition. Arsenal have only won it twice. Part of me really wants to see them win it again.
Just part of you.
But part of me, yeah. Look, all of me, actually. But yeah, so the reason I mentioned that though is it's not like I'm attached to it because my club win it all the time. I do think it's an interesting competition in terms of you do with the bigger teams you do see newer players coming through, and that's interesting. It's a sort of again a point of difference. It's become very sort of uncompetitive though, isn't it? Swansea won it in 2013. Mm-hmm. Since then, I think it's only City, United, Liverpool and Chelsea that have won it.
Which is a funny thing, isn't it?
It's become really, really repetitive. It wasn't always like that as well. And it's been around since 1961. It's like, it is a sort of proud old competition in its own way. And it would be a shame to see it go. But I do just think it's becoming like so sort of almost like disrespected, really.
Well, it has,
with its place in the pecking order. That it
has been. There's no two ways about that. I think when the final comes around, everyone goes, "Oh, it's a final of a cup competition."
Yeah,
this is part of it as well. I think I don't know if this would be possible. Obviously, the schedule is kind of squeezed very tightly, but the idea of a final being midway through the season devalues it. I think. A final the end of a campaign should be at the end of a season, right? Well, I think that might have undermined it as well.
Towards the end of the season, usually late Feb kind of time.
I quite like it. It feels like
I do as well.
Yeah, it feels like a warm-up act for finals.
Well, isn't that the problem though? Like that it.
Well,
but it's kind of
so the head of UEFA,
Alex
Alexander Seferin, said that I don't think England and too many people would miss the League Cup if it was to go. Which is quite the opinion from the head of UEFA, but we're kind of used to the heads.
See, I'm totally up for it going. I don't want someone from over there telling us what we should be doing over here.
No, if we get rid of it, it'll be our idea.
Yeah, and it'll be more bendy.
Yeah, he said that compensation, some sort of compensation package could be made for the teams that are a bit lower down.
Yeah, and how long is that going to last?
And then he went on to say, and if you did that, you could then move the FA Cup back. So, like the FA Cup final would be end of Feb, and it was just like, okay, there are some things.
Get off,
my man. Yeah. That the FA Cup final should be the season close. If you remember, for a while it was. Anyway,
we'll end up with Todd Bowley's All-Star game.
We will, but look on the task of the League Cup. Most changes, in fact, you could almost say all changes. Happen in football to benefit the big teams.
Yeah.
Right. Let's, as Sam says, let's not take the piss here when he's quoting Roy Hodgson. So scrapping the League Cup would be good for them. However, as you've rightly said, Jim, they seem to always win it in recent years. Should that influence your opinion, though, on whether it's scrapped or not? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think so.
And should younger players, I like the idea of that, but that's on the clubs to play them and so on. So I'm kind of a bit... I'm not sure. You know me, I always like to think of the England team with this, and it would release a little bit of fixture congestion, which I think is probably needed. But again, who's that needed for? The big teams.
Yeah, it doesn't become pointless just because the big teams win it.
No. In fact, because the odd thing is actually, you could argue that adds more value to it in a weird way, that they are taking it seriously despite them not wanting to be in it. I mean... Obviously, you've mentioned how clubs in Europe, if they're playing in Europe, then they're given different treatment to the others when they enter the competition and so on. I think scrapping extra time has been good. I've said this for years. Get rid of the two-legged semi-finals, because if you want to make it ever so slightly more in favour of the smaller clubs, then you've got to do that. On a one-off game, Fulham have come close to being Liverpool. I appreciate that's not a win. Over two legs, they're never going to be Liverpool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and that's just not going to happen.
I think Sam's point, though, is that the changes that have led to the bigger clubs being seeded in such a favourable way to them makes it even more likely that it's just going to be the big clubs forever.
Yeah, but there's no doubt it would be a shame if it went. I wouldn't lose too much sleep if it did. What I would do is, if the League Cup was going to go, get another round of international fixtures in there.
No.
What?
What have you done?
You've Trojan horsed this, haven't you? You're not having the final word. Don't move on. That's not the final word.
And also, they're not going to move the Nations League there. You just want a pointless friendly back.
Yeah. I'm only saying what a lot of people are thinking.
Really?
Out on the streets, that's what a lot of people are saying.
You should lose sleep over this.
Yeah, you should also lose your Facebook account. This is nonsense.
Facebook account. Yeah, that's true. You can't spout that kind of crap on Facebook these days, can you? So, yes, like I say, I'm fairly kind of easy come, easy go with this. If it stays, then fine, a little bit more football. But if it goes, I don't think I'd lose too much sleep. And I reckon that's probably the feeling for a fair amount of people.
Do you think you'll be rejuvenated if at the end of the season, when the charges finally fall on Man City and they're charged and found guilty of whatever, that they get everything revoked in that period, which would mean
do you think that's going to happen?
Spurs win the League Cup in 2021.
Yep.
Chelsea win it in 2019.
Yep.
And Arsenal win it in 2018.
They are, Jim. There's the big win that you're hoping for.
Yeah, I want that League Cup.
Yes, of course. That's very much if Manchester City.
Well, Villa as well. Sorry, Villa in 2020. So
no need to apologise.
Be great if they all did parades
at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, there we are. All right. Coming up after this little break, more of your questions. Right, Jim, you've got the next question.
I do. It's from Supernova Dragon on X. Why are football managers in the Premier League getting younger and younger? And this isn't like a doctors and policemen thing, is that they actually do seem to be getting younger in terms of age profile. Only a few years ago, we had managers in their 50s and 60s as the norm, and now, with Ruben Amorim going to Man United, the average age must have surely dropped massively. And it's an interesting point, isn't it?
It's knackering being a manager, I reckon.
I think that is genuinely part of it. Like, I think energy might have replaced authority as a plus point in terms of people making these hires.
And no older managers are going to be like drinking in Carabao and stuff. So I think that's
the doctors probably don't fully advise against it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want that extra bit, no, it's true, isn't it? I mean, little comment on that. I mean, there was a time in politics here where with Blair and Cameron, it was all getting younger and younger. Maybe it's just a cycle, because you see what's happened in America.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll have Roy Hodgson will come back, manage for another 10 years, something like that, or 4 more years at least. No, to answer the question seriously, this could be simply a case of people being a little bit more open-minded with their picks of manager for whatever reason. If you think about it back in the day, and we're talking about in this country, perhaps specifically, I don't know what it's like, but there was that old stereotype of a manager in this country, which I think is long gone now. But old habits can die hard.
Man in a suit with a cigar almost.
Yeah, flat cap sort of thing, and all that kind of business. There was a thing of, hang on a minute, but a young manager who's just the same age or just a year older than the players, will they really respect him? And I don't know, maybe there was a thing. I understand there's a lot of players.
Brian Clough, as long ago as that, he got into management quite young.
He did,
so he was an outlier even then.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's not going to be one reason fits all here.
Sure.
There's been a number of them, but you're right to mention that. So I just wonder if it just took a little bit of a while in this country for players to get used to the idea of having a younger manager, to those on the board to having a guy who's half their age or whatever, just a little bit like that, and suddenly ground is made and someone does well and okay, so we can look for guys who are maybe in their 30s pulling up trees in the Bundesliga or the Portuguese league, something like that. I mean, you look at Hertzler at Brighton, for example.
31. I can't believe it. Yeah,
it could still be playing.
Yeah,
it's that is quite something. And I honestly think that, there is something about having. I know we think of diversity in one particular area, and a very important area, of course, but diversity is in all shapes and sizes, of course.
Sure.
And young managers, perhaps, is one that's the boundary's been pushed back a little bit there on that. Also, as well, I think trends in football, maybe because of sharing of information, internet, of course, you can look at what coaches are doing in South America in the way you couldn't do. You could look at coaches what they're doing in Eastern Europe or wherever, take your pick, what's going on. And so a younger manager doesn't have to experience away at Red Star Belgrade to find out what they're doing there, like they did in the 80s or the 90s. Or we don't have to play in European competition to kind of see what tactical innovations are being made. So, in theory, you can have the knowledge of that much younger. You may not have the actual experience of playing it, but you've got the knowledge. Can you then apply that? Well, clearly someone like Amorim so far has done that mightily well at Sporting, and there are other examples. So that could be another reason as well. Yeah,
I also feel like there's more clubs generally, and maybe football generally, has a more open approach to different routes for younger players who fall by the wayside, whether through injury or just like fall out of the game. Mm-hmm. I was speaking, this isn't quite relevant because it's a different sport, but I was speaking to someone a couple of days ago about when do you tell a player that they can't make it? Because generally it's at 24, 25, by that point if you're not picked up or if you're trying to reach a specific level to get into the professional game, you're not going to get there. Yeah. And now the conversation has changed from, right, you're really into football, have you tried coaching, kind of thing. So you see a lot of players starting younger in that journey, whereas often it used to be, I remember when the era that we grew up in when we were kids in the 90s and 2000s, players would only really start thinking about coaching when they're on the cusp of retirement. Whereas I think now at the moment, broadly, across the world, younger players at a younger age are looking at that side anyway to improve their own game.
You say that. Tony Pulis got his first coaching badges when he was 19, which is interesting.
I mean, again,
I guess he's probably an outlier. But
that's it. I mean, again, like there are plenty of examples that you can use to back up your arguments or even take. But I think that there is a general kind of movement towards certain areas, and that is one, with, as you say, Vish, without a shadow of a doubt as well. And
I think your thing about scouting as well is important because you can scout managers more because the videos, all that kind of stuff, leagues are more accessible. And I think a good example of that is where a lot of the championship teams have got their managers from. Yeah. Do you know the average age in the championship last year was 43 for a manager, which is crazy.
It is, yeah.
Well, this is apparently the first year since 98-99 that there's not been a manager over the age of 60 in the Premier League. Big Ange is the oldest at 59, looking good for it as well. I didn't think he looks younger than that. Yeah. And I wonder if part of it is just about what modern players respond to. Well, Jose Mourinho mentioned a little while ago that managing modern players is very different to managing players when he started. And I think it might just be that the idea of the kind of strict authoritarian disciplinarian is a little bit out of date because these players are, for the most part, they're adults and they want to be spoken to like adults rather than, you need like a team leader rather than a head teacher. And I think that's a change we've seen across society as well. Like, I think office culture is very different now. In the past, offices might be full of dusty old sex pests kind of stuck away in offices, just making everything very formal and horrible. Whereas now things are a bit more open and a bit more about communication and managing people in a sensitive way. And I think that's just, present in football as well. You can't. This idea that football exists out of societal changes. I think you're right, and I think that with that approach, that we now seen as sort of a little bit old-fashioned in football, although it's still there and sometimes has a little bit of merit in it. But that idea of the older man sort of talking down to you. Yes. Whereas I think players now, I mean, you remember when Hodgson, the aforementioned Hodgson, was managing England, literally got Gary Neville in to be like, can you talk to these younger guys? Exactly. Yeah. So
you end up going from disciplinarian, like headmaster types to like cool teacher types.
There's a bit of that, and also as well, I think this is probably a lesser reason for this trend, but footballers now, they sort of peak at a younger age. So actually, this idea again that a footballer in late 20s, early 30s, more late 20s is coming into their own. Could a 32 or 33 really manage this person? Well, actually, people are looking to youth a bit more. So a 21-year-old, actually a 31-year-old seems a little bit older. But I think that relatability is very important for people. You think about the type of media people consume, podcasts or YouTube and all the rest of it. They want that relatable kind of down-to-earth thing and somebody on a similar level. Now, is Herzl more relatable than Ange Postecoglou to these players? I don't know. I'm not there.
Yeah.
But ostensibly, you would think he would be, So, again, all sorts of reasons, and I think societal ones are a key part in this as well.
Yeah. I do. Actually, I think it might be the start of a beginning of a trend, which is that we might start seeing managerial reigns get longer again. Because I think there's a recognition from clubs that even the best managers, apart from some outliers, their peak tends to be about 10 years. Like even the really, really elite managers, you get people like Pep Guardiola, Carlo Ancelotti, etc., where it's longer than that, but they're even more rare. And I think if you look at what Man United are attempting to do with Ruben Amorim, what Arsenal are trying to do with Mikel Arteta, what Pep Guardiola has managed to do at a few places, what Jurgen Klopp did at Liverpool, they're looking for legacy managers, and it makes sense to get a good one young, give them everything they can to mould the club in their image, even at really, really big clubs, and then get the best out of that peak, sort of squeeze every drop of lemon juice out of it.
Indeed. And I think as well, and I'm speaking about, again, the majority of my chat, if not all of it, is about this country, by the way, that this country, we have a dearth of coaches, it's clear to see. So tactical innovations are often coming from abroad, which is why, I know Arteta played most of his football here, but that's why sometimes you see the younger managers coming from elsewhere. But also, we see clubs now structured in what we used to consider a more European way, sporting directors and all the rest of it. So they delegate more. So a younger coach, I think that kind of fits because you don't have that guy who's,
also doing the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Late 50s, he's been around the block, he knows how to do, all that kind of stuff. So
your work is on the shop floor, which is what you want to do, and B, what you got you into that, that piqued your interest in that particular.
Which again
in the first place.
goes back to the earlier point I was making about the world being a smaller place now. You've got all the information at your fingertips. You don't have to have years and years of coaching experience to know how that particular side set up or how you want to play. Can you implement it? Yes, there are still things, whether you're young or old, you need to be able to lead people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's still certain things there. But anyway.
Just very quickly, you mentioned before at the start, I think it'd be easier to look at this and be like, right, we've got rid of the old codgers, they were stuck in their ways, this and the other. It was interesting. I was speaking to someone who is pretty close with Sam Allardyce.
Yes.
Used to work with him at Bolton and kind of went through and still keeps in touch with him. And I think Allardyce even tried to get him involved in with England as well, very briefly.
Yeah.
But
is it still? Is the offer still? No, I don't know.
Yeah, it was the pint of wine. Yeah. But I remember talking to him about it, about is he gonna come back? Why, I feel like he's positioning himself as this fixer of relegation season. So his season is basically February to May. Yeah. And he was like, why? Funny, I talked to him about it, and he was just, it's exhausting being a manager.
Yeah.
It's so tiring. Yes. And if you've only got the energy for some of it, but you still want that, then that's actually quite a good gig.
Yeah, I love the fact though that in among all a lot of this chat about managers getting younger, which is absolutely correct. Yeah, you don't want to throw the old man out with the bathwater.
No, absolutely.
Kind of thing, because there's some, and I love the fact at the possibly biggest, arguably the biggest club in the world, still winning Champions League trophies. It's Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah. Don Carlo is
he loves it, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. Yeah, I mean I think he's probably one a bit like Alex Ferguson, where he can change with the times really easily, and he understands how to do that and what's needed. I know he has lots of coaches around him, and Alex Ferguson was always good like that as well. And I think it's also worth, as we've mentioned Sam Allardyce, and we've also mentioned the idea of the sort of dinosaur manager. We've mentioned it a lot, but he doesn't get the credit for this. He was known as a real innovator when it comes to sort of data-led analysis of things across the board with fitness and with the transfer market as well. And I just think We should just mention that more often.
Yeah,
because if we're going to laugh at him a lot, we need to be fair to him. Because that way we get away with it a bit.
You are absolutely right. But yes, I think that if you want to make it as a manager, delegation's what you need. If you want to be a record breaker.
Is that from the TV show Record Breakers from the 90s?
It was dedication.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Dust yourself off, Vish, and ask the next question.
Yeah, I will do. It comes from Mike Willoughby over email. I recently learned that in the NFL, coaches can communicate with players throughout the game through their headsets. Where have you been, Mike?
I learned that watching Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Sorry, not having a go, Mike. But he asked, what do you think the impact would be if the same technology was available to modern footballers, allowing them to hear in-game instructions from coaching staff? And now, I made a note immediately after reading this, and I said, someone is going to hack it.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
And, they'll get the wavelength wrong, and they'll accidentally get a delivery order, and things will go a bit nuts.
Do you mean Pete?
Yeah.
You mean Pete will hack it?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah.
Right. My mind didn't go there, if I'm honest with you.
So, it's usually it's the quarterbacks who have the headset, because they're essentially like the generals on the field. And
but they can't talk back to the coach.
No, it's not two-way.
I'm not doing that play.
But they're kind of getting the instruction. But they can call an audible. They have the power to do that. And certain quarterbacks have more power to freewheel on the sly than others, but you feel like it needs to be like a midfielder, don't you? Like a central midfielder or like a Virgil van Dijk type.
Yeah, I think
centre-back.
Some players' heads would explode.
Yes.
With all the information. It's tempting to think that, although I think modern players tend to be very good at taking in on information and executing it quickly at the real top level. We hear about that all the time. And also, footballers play a lot of online games like Call of Duty, so maybe it would just be absolutely second nature.
Yeah.
I think one potentially brilliant element of it, I've taken this to be that every player has the ability to hear what the managers are saying. You would see instant changes of formation, but then you would have the opposition instantly changing formation to counter it. It would be like when starlings do murmurations.
Right, okay.
Right.
Yeah, like kind of, yeah. I mean, that would be quite beautiful if you're watching that from above.
And absolutely baffling as a fan.
Yeah. I was maybe thinking that Jack Grealish would have, sometimes drummers wear those noise-cancelling headphones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the the feedback or the delay on sound.
And they also want to preserve their ears. So
Yes. And so I wonder if Grealish is like, no, as little as possible, and it's just the Magic Roundabout theme tune.
I was about to say, I think if I was a manager, I'd have just pumping music through it.
Yeah.
I think this is cheating.
Do you really?
No, I don't really think that. I think that the NFL.
You think it's American, so you don't like it?
There is that.
Yeah.
Although I love Tim Ream though.
Yeah.
And Brian McBride. But I think that it's such a different sport. And the quarterback, there is no equivalent of the quarterback. I know what you mean by a sort of a deep lying playmaker. It's just not the same.
But someone who sees the game is what I mean.
Yeah, but
I don't think it would be irrelevant. I don't think it would be irrelevant to football though.
Well, I mean, you could make anything relevant, but I think that the NFL with its, it is just a set piece game. There's no real flow to the game, of course. And there are so many different plays that just to me, it is not relevant really to football. I mean, what are you going to do? Just say, all right, spread the ball out more. Run. Yeah, exactly. I think that you can get messages to the players, but as we know, most of the time, it's at half time. The coach then decides, right, we need to shake it up and do this, that, and the other. I think football is a football team is a much more coherent unit, if you like, as a team, whereas NFL, yes, of course, it has to be coherent. You have to do the blockers and the runners and all that business. But as you say, the quarterback is like head, shoulders, knees and toes, the most important player on the pitch. Like, it's just so blatantly obvious. Whereas in football, that's not the case. So,
and I suppose sorry
to be all serious about it.
No, that's fine. Because I think ultimately the question to ask is, will it improve the game?
Yeah. No,
it does improve the NFL. It doesn't improve here. Football, but real football. I would like the idea that Nathan Redmond's running down the wing and suddenly he just hears
Pep's like, give me that.
Sorry, who's that? Hello, Nathan. How did you get this number?
I left my technical area to talk to you. I've risked a booking.
We're not even playing. I'm playing in Turkey. What are you doing here?
You know what? There is the potential that it would make the game a lot less interesting. Again, working on the idea that every player could hear like a channel that the manager could speak into, because I think that would be the way that would make more sense in English football. If like a player's out of position, the manager can just fix it. Yeah. So you might just get these like quite boring wars of attrition.
Well, and I think ultimately it would benefit the big clubs, because if they're having a mare, then their tactical genius on the sideline or their better manager would be able to have more of an influence. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of, if you consider sport as an artistic pursuit, which I believe football to be, then the pursuit of perfection is the enemy of good and entertaining.
Sure.
So I suppose,
I think leave it alone. Good question, Mike. But shove that idea up your arse. Jim, next question.
Callum's been in touch. Let's hope we're nicer to Callum. He has been in touch on X, so obviously we're really into that. What would be the most what's good for the Ramble isn't good for your club signing?
I saw this question and I had a quick Google to see if Squadran Mustafi had retired. And regrettably, he had.
He has,
yeah. Come out of retirement.
Once marked a referee. If Arsenal have a disappointing result these days, I look at that picture to go, it's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah.
and
they were playing Norwich.
Yeah, you just gave me a throwback to when Luke Shaw was trying to clear the ball and then he appealed for a pull on his shirt and it was Harry Maguire.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think Cristiano Ronaldo going back to Man United.
I mean, a third time would be hysterical.
Jim, it would be super. Amorim's in there, young coach.
First thing he does, the Sporting connection.
Last thing, exactly.
Oh my God.
Last thing you need is to have him come in. I'll take it from here, Bruce.
Or you know what? Something like Neymar getting fit again and going to Man United. Maybe.
Neymar going to Chelsea because they've not got many wide players with a bit of skill.
That's a much better example, much better one. If I can answer this semi-seriously as well, I think it's not impossible that Jack Grealish will one day go back to Aston Villa, but I don't think it will work if he does. I don't know if he'd fit in this team. Obviously, he's a very good player, and Emery would know.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be good for us.
You're right. It wouldn't be good for us.
No, it'd be good. It'd be good because he'd wind down. He'd be a hero. He'd be flair on the pitch, and he'd probably be flair off it because he doesn't need it. He'll be doing it for fun.
All right, okay.
Because he'll have, his medal haul, provided they don't take them away from him. He's got the medals and trophies there.
Yeah. John Joe Shelby back to Newcastle United.
Oh, I think that's. I don't think I'd be moved one way or the other with that.
Oh, up yours with a rusty one. That'd be great for the Ramble, would it not, Jim?
I mean, but what set of circumstances has to happen?
They have to sign him.
Yeah, I guess PSR is really squeezing it. They've got a massive injury
Don't worry
crisis.
about all that.
No, but I want the context for it because
fine, all that, and then they re-sign him, and he's back in the black and white.
And then what? He's like 15 games a season.
I don't think Newcastle fans would be happy to see him back. I'd be happy. I'd love to see him back.
Yeah, okay, but
back at Liverpool. Then you have to understand, Vish.
Liverpool. I'll take that.
Right, there we go.
Like that.
Right.
Balotelli in the Premier League.
Any of these previous clubs?
Yeah, apart from the ones we support.
Well, you know what?
He never played for Man United, so you're fine.
No, but I'm saying, but I mean, that wouldn't stop us.
One that isn't a million miles away from possibility would be Balotelli at West Ham, because obviously that problem they've had with filling the striker's position.
Andy Carroll
has been a massive.
Oh, now we're talking. You see, come on, boys.
There we go.
It's a blank canvas. This.
I know this wouldn't be. I mean, I don't know if this would be good for the Ramble. And I'm just bringing it up because it was mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago, and I was actually really all for it. I would take Pogba back at United.
Really?
And it won't be, I think, good for the Ramble in terms of, I think it will give us content and it wouldn't necessarily be like fun, breezy content. I think it'll be like, what's going on here?
I think it's a crap answer. Donny van der Beek back to Man United is a better answer.
No, because he won't play. He's rubbish. We established that he's rubbish. He's
that's true, yeah.
We'll play little passes in half spaces. Get into a full space, mate. Why don't you move into a proper space and have a shot?
Get out your little pocket universe and actually do something.
Yeah, or you have a dig, mate. Or you have a dig from range.
Yeah.
If Pogba came back again, would they announce it as Pogback back?
Almost certainly. Oh, yeah, actually, now that you said that.
Pogback was bad, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Enough time has passed.
All the Pog things were terrible, yeah. Zlatan.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, he's been retired a while.
Yeah, but just... So...
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean,
Zlatan in the Sky Sports studio.
I think
that would get tiresome very quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
don't know. I thought...
I think he's too much of a caricature.
And he's also too he's aware of it all now. isn't
Yeah, as Luke often says, it was like when David Hasselhoff got in on the joke.
he? Yeah.
I see.
Well, there's a fair few answers there. I think I would like people to get involved on X.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think, because
Always.
no doubt we've missed a few there.
Allardyce back at England? Would that be too far?
Yeah, I think don't mess with England.
Because you don't enjoy it. That's suddenly not good for the Ramble, is it?
Yeah, genuinely. No, you see, that's what I think. Someone asked this as before about like maybe Fizzer managing Man United.
No, that would. Oh God.
So pre-Saudi, I really thought Fizzer was going to end up at Newcastle. It just seemed written in the stars.
I think Fizzer managing Everton, because they definitely go down under him.
Do you know what's?
It'd be a real test of whether Everton even can go down. I'm not convinced they can.
Ten Hag going back to Man United.
I'm going to leave you with this because it's second-hand information, and I suppose it doesn't need to be taken seriously because I don't necessarily work in that field. But there was a hint of something that would be outstanding for the Ramble.
Well, go on then.
Mourinho to Newcastle.
Oh, come on. We've touted that for ages.
No, we've touted it for ages.
Yeah.
I think...
When you said, it's someone I'm not sure and so on, are you just saying you remembered listening to a Ramble podcast?
No, because it came up a couple of weeks ago because it involves...
Who are your sources?
I'm not gonna say...
Is it Luke?
No, I'm not going to say the source.
Pete?
And I'm not going to say the...
Ant and Dec?
The one in the
They were getting involved with the takeover, weren't
That's
they?
true, actually. There's a binding individual in this who is also a Ramble quote-unquote favourite.
Oh, Andy Brassel.
Well, Richard Keys.
There we go.
And there are basically... obviously, a lot needs to happen, but there are a chain of events where Mourinho gets to Newcastle facilitated by Richard Keys. And I think that'd be good for the Ramble.
I agree.
Yeah.
There we are. I think that answers the question, Callum.
You're watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.